Hello, everyone, and welcome to Technology Simplified by IT Voice. Tech Talk everyone can understand. I'm your host, Will Slappy, and today we have Jake DeMille with us, joining as our guest. He is the leader of the VCIO team at IT Voice. Hello, Jake. How are you today?
Doing well. How you doing, Will?
Doing great. So today our topic is phishing. So can you start off by telling us what is phishing?
Well, phishing ultimately is a type of malicious attack that bad actors are going to use to convince normal everyday people to either give them information or install malicious software on their computers.
I thought you were going to give me some sort of thing about how it was hooking up bait and hooks and that kind of thing, but you went the right route with it. But just so all our listeners know, we're talking about phishing, not the phishing spelled with an F that sometimes people think of when they hear the term. So tell me, why is phishing such a continuing problem for organizations?
Well, phishing's tough because it really tries to play on the heartstrings of the end users. It's an attack that you don't really recognize as an attack. It goes after people that ultimately think that they're doing the right thing. And the only real way to help stop it is through that education of all those end users.
So can you give us an example of what phishing looks like, just so we're real clear on what we're talking about?
Absolutely. So a kind of generic email phishing campaign might be a email that comes in that looks like it's tagged with a common provider like Amazon or something. You might say, hey, we here at Amazon have seen some unusual account activity with your account. Please click the link here to reset your password. When you click on the link, it then takes you to a place where it will look like an Amazon website, and you'll enter your credentials. When in all actuality, what's happening is you're entering your creds into a database that a bad actor will then use from there to either mimic as that end user, or they'll sell it off to someone else who will kind of take the next steps there. As you get deeper and deeper into the different types of phishing campaigns that'll be initiated, some are more targeted. It'll either be a spear phishing tactic, which it will go after somebody saying, using their own company's logos, people that know of certain end users from a specific bank account. So it will be more custom tailored to that end user. Or there might be an example of something like whaling, where a CEO might be targeted from a specific organization, or a CFO is more traditionally targeted, asking for things like wire transfers. So lots of different kinds of different phishing accounts, just really depending upon the target and who's being gone after at the time.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it actually makes a lot of sense why they use the term phishing, because just like a fish thinks that they're biting onto some food, they actually get hooked in the process and get tricked into it. So phishing in the technology world sounds very much like to be the same thing. You think something's good and legitimate, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you got hooked on a line and got tricked into something. So I think you kind of answered my next question, but in terms of what the bait is, I think you already gave us some examples of that. But talk a little bit more about what the bait is, or how do scammers attempt to pressure people into gaining that trust, and ultimately just trick them into thinking that, hey, this is good for you, when it turns out not to be.
Sure. Well, so the bait can be a wide range of things, and that really depends on how targeted the actual attack is. The bait can be anything from casting really that wide net in a phishing attack of, who can I send this targeted email out to, say, thousands and thousands of people, and my expectation is that I'm going to get one, maybe two different people to react on it. Things like Amazon accounts, maybe some different banks, Microsoft email, some common use platforms that most everybody's going to have. Attackers will use, tactics for asking credentials or asking things about those types of general use software without ever really targeting the individual. And it's just the hopes of, I can use a spray and pray type tactic, get as many of these out there as I possibly can, and I'm probably going to get some action on the distant end where at least some folks are going to fall for it. Those, as opposed to doing something a lot more targeted, going after those CEOs, CFOs, going after, maybe users from specific companies. Maybe I'm going out there and I'm taking somebody like IT Voice, for instance, and I'm able to secure a Gmail domain that is at itvoic.com, and there'll be a misspelling of VOIKE at the end of it. We call that a spoof message. When I'm able to take something that looks like it's from a legitimate source, and I am able to fake it to where the end user thinks that they're having a conversation with someone, but they're really not.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard of all the social engineering that people are doing these days, where they're taking that to a whole nother level by, learning about the people that they're targeting from what they're finding on social media to even be able to make it much more realistic. So now, Jake, what would you say a scammer's favorite season is?
If I had to guess, I would probably imagine that it's fishing season. Just to
That's
kind of
right.
go.
All right, that was my one joke for the day. All right. So seriously though, what can somebody in business do to avoid getting sucked in? Getting hooked on the line on these phishing schemes.
The number one thing that they can do is education. The more that their employees and everyone knows that these types of attacks are happening and they are relevant and that people do fall for them, the more they'll be on the lookout for them. They're getting more and more complex, better and better kind of every week as we go. The websites are looking more legitimate. So the best advice that I can give on what do you do is when in doubt, ask. Use a second form of verification if you need to, whether it's picking up the phone and calling the individual who was supposedly sent the email, or asking your IT department if the message trace looks legitimate and if it's actually coming from who it says it is. You can also use some different software packages that are out there that'll help either flag these when they look suspicious, just to give you an extra hand on, hey, this doesn't look quite right, or even stop some of them from ever reaching the end user in the first place.
Right. Now that makes a lot of sense. And actually, it makes me think, for those of us in the C-suite like myself, we have to make sure that we have a culture within our company that it's okay to ask. I know there was one story that, basically the AP person was like, well, hey, I don't want to bother them and ask. And that was kind of what, the pressure that they felt just because of the culture in the organization. And then turns out they, wired $125,000 to a bad actor. So I think it's both on the employee side of asking, and also for those of us in the C-suite, making sure we're encouraging a culture that, hey, it's always okay to double check before you wire some money or write a check or, buy some gift cards, whatever it is. Like if it doesn't smell right, just ask and validate it. Now when somebody does validate it, should they just reply right back to that email and say, hey, Bob, is that really you? Or how should they go about validating it?
Well, if the phishing attack is coming from someone who's really taking their time, that email address itself could be compromised. And there's a few different tactics and some ways that folks can do that. So using a different form of verification is always recommended, whether that's, picking up the phone and actually calling the person, sending them a text, or, getting with someone else that can do that third party kind of verification for that. Always try to do a separate set of verification, because if I've had the ability to send a phishing email from one address, then I'm going to be able to send a reply to it as well.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really great point. So let's just say I'm a CEO sitting there and I'm hearing you talk about this, and maybe I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. With this, just seems like a whole lot in terms of to do, and maybe I've been hit, or at least I'm feeling vulnerable out there. Are there any resources outside of the company that somebody could go to get help in this area?
Absolutely will. So, different MSPs will help provide solution sets that are around this. There are also a lot of different kind of social IT groups that folks can get involved in. There's several different security providers out there that specialize in these type of things, or even just pointing employees to start listening to podcasts such as this, kind of start building the building blocks on that education type of approach to this. It wouldn't be happening if the tactics didn't work, and the tactics are going to continue to evolve. So an individual that's running the company, they can't be expected to keep up with all the latest trends that are going to happen. So really kind of engaging some different third parties that are real experts in this field and that are going to be on top of the attacks tomorrow is what the folks should be looking out for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. Just like I have an outside accountant or an outside attorney that helps make sure that we keep things in line on that. I need somebody outside on the technology front that can help make sure that we're up to speed on those threats to our business. So that makes a whole lot of sense. Well, Jake, thanks for your time today and joining us here on Technology Simplified by IT Voice, tech talk that everyone can understand. And as Jake said on his last point there, we'd love it to have people listen in. So please spread the word. We love it if you would give us a good rating, as that helps us get more listeners as well that way. So we appreciate everyone listening in today.
Thanks, Will.